A Navy investigation revealing the 2 Navy SEALs sank within 47 seconds of falling into the ocean because of the weight of their gear.
You know, they didn't prepare, they didn't train.
The students must tread water for 5 minutes in 72 pounds of gear without using their hands.
All right, so you read the title right. Navy SEALs can't tread water, inability to tread water. I brought an expert on, guy who knows his shit. All right, so Jake, you and I were talking about this. You're reading this report. Jake's going to have an outstanding video going into granular detail. Inability to tread water, fatigue. What the hell's going on with the Navy SEALs?
Hey man, listen, these cats gun deck training flat out. They never had climbed ladders. They hadn't fallen in the water. They didn't test their gear. 50% of the platoon was inefficient and never deployed their water wings. The result is, unfortunately, we have 2 dead SEAls.
You see SEALs, small special forces unit. You see all this cowboy shit from my standpoint, talk to other fellas, where guys just think they know better. And this kind of deal where you expect the SEALs, when you see Somali pirates with a hook and a rope climbing up, they got this covered. You got dudes all kitted out, 100 pounds of shit. You think they know better, like, okay, if the flotation doesn't work, this is the fail safe. You know, again, Jake's got a good video on this, but what do we do and who got fired?
Having read the report, one of the dudes that was having the trouble, the original guy that fell off the ladder, was holding on to the end of the ladder. And I don't know about you, Jameson, but I water skied. You can only hold on to the water ski rope for about 3 seconds when you ain't getting up. It's bad, man. It's bad. They just, you know, they didn't prepare. They didn't train. You know, you asked me who got fired. I imagine the OIC got fired. I imagine the training officer got fired. And I wouldn't be surprised if the XO and CO got fired also.
Now, when you're seeing this report, you know, guys, that's part of it. You're going to fall in, shit's going to go south, water crashing against a boat, big waves. You know, I'm sure that happened in training, but would you expect if one guy goes down, in your experience, one guy goes in the drink, other guys will follow him in the drink, you think there'd be the flotation device are tested, right? The dip test. They're going to float at a minimum. 2 guys, they said, in 47 seconds drowned. And you go, how is that possible, guys? And you see this buds training.
The students must tread water for 5 minutes in 72 pounds of gear without using their hands. This requires great physical stamina. The enemy is panic.
Where they're really prepping them for it. And these guys have done training on this, I suspect, and they're ready. And you read this and you go, how prepared are we when you see Somali pirates board a ship in under 30 seconds?
Yeah, man, let me tell you something. My wife hit it on the head. So we were up in Michigan. I was going to jump into this canal. She said, hey, if you're having problems, I'll come get you. I told her, listen, if I'm having problems, you let me drown, because whatever's giving me problems is going to kill you. And it's the same situation. If a Navy SEAL is in the water and he's drowning and I'm another Navy SEAL, whatever he's drowning from is going to kill me too, because we both at the same levels. So this whole like go in and rescue your buddy, if a Navy SEAL needs rescuing in the water, that dude is in the worst situation in the world. You jump in the water, you die into.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that. That dude can't swim. I probably can't swim. There's another problem. And hopefully that guy who's drowning, the report says 47 seconds. And again, check Jake's video. You go, wait a second here. He's not making. Maybe there's something else I'm not considering here. Shit's not. This flotation device aren't working. I don't know what the protocol is. You cut loose of some gear. You unstrap it on whatever your thing is. Like, here's what you do if the flotation's not working. You think there'd be a plan A, plan B. You know, stuff goes bad all the time. What is the protocol for this? I mean, what would you do typically? Or where do you see the F-ups? Again, Jake's had a good video on this, but just generally.
So, I mean, the biggest thing to me is they gun decked the whole thing, right? They hadn't actually climbed the side of a ship doing visit board search and seizure. I know I read the whole report. It says they had ship takedown training. My guess is that they used the helos. They fast roped onto the back of the bird. They didn't hook and climb, right? So if you ask me where the failures are, one, you know, if someone gets shot in front of you going in the door, the last thing you do is stop and try to render aid. You better get in a gunfight because you're going to get killed too. So sometimes as stoic and as hard as it is in the warrior culture, sometimes you got to step over your dead buddy and keep fighting and then come back to him when it's all done. In this situation, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way I'm ever telling nobody to jump off a caving ladder into the water to save somebody unless I see that dude hit his head, or like there might be a couple circumstances where I try to go help somebody. Now, the one thing I will say, this was the third stick of 3 getting on the ship. So they already had 2 teams of assaulters on the ship already. So it wasn't like it was the first boat. So they had a little bit of leeway. They already had some guys on the deck that were holding cover and securing the area. But to me, like the biggest flaw in this is sending another guy into the water after another guy who was hanging onto the caving ladder. So they watched him for 11 seconds hanging onto a caving ladder, trying to get his stuff fixed. You know, and I'm going to say this, Jameson, it's real life now. Middle of the night, ocean always wins. SEALs are the most capable people in the world, but they're not exempt from training. If they don't rehearse, if they don't train, and they try to go do something new, they're going to end up dead. Just like we're seeing here, they're going to end up getting killed because too much can do will kill. So that's one of the sayings in the teams, right? Too much can do will kill.
Is it that cowboy culture that we perceive? You know, someone like me, old guy, I'm perceiving a lot of cowboy shit. Like guys, you want them to have bravado. That's why they're there. You want them to think they can do anything. But at some point, shouldn't you know your limits?
Absolutely. I mean, shoot, there's some times in the SEAL teams like we were off the coast of Virginia Beach doing a SUROP, just doing basic Marine Corps survey of the bottom of the ocean in sea state, probably 2 to maybe 3, same kind of sea state. We were out there for 3 hours and 45 minutes. I didn't have no flotation on. So in the SEAL teams, if you have a wetsuit on, that counts as your flotation. I didn't have no flotation on, and I sucked in a little water. And I'm like, oh, and you can feel the reaper coming, man. Like you're in these situations, you can feel when death is getting close. And I say, you know what? I'm going into the beach. Not a minute into my swim into the beach, another guy comes, pops his head up. Hey, Jake, where you going? So I'm going to the beach, man. This is some BS. I've been out here 3 hours and 30 minutes. I swallowed some water. I'm headed in. He said, I'm headed in too. Okay. And this is when, as an officer, as a leader in the SEAL teams, I realized everybody's functional level is pretty much at the exact same level. Within 5 minutes on the beach, all 14 guys that were in the water were standing next to a lifeguard station in Virginia Beach. And 3 of the dudes was like, God damn, that was bad. I'm like, yeah, that was bad. I'm like, why? That's why all 14 of us are standing here on the beach right now. It was just one of those things where the Reaper showed up and everybody was like, same training level. I need to get myself out of this situation. So we're all standing on the beach.
I mean, is it a cowboy culture there? When you see this and guys looking inside, looking out, go a lot of bravado, but we're having a lot of problems historically. When you see a code over country, you see a lot of this stuff. Is it fixable? Is it a fixable thing?
So here's what I'm going to say, man. Too much can do will kill, period. And there is a lot of can do. So this is where you need that E7, that chief, to be like, hey, man, nah. You need one of the officers to be like, nah, we're not going to do it, right? But here's the problem we're in. We're not in 9/11 no more. We're not in a GWAT. So guys are fighting to get real world missions. And when they get presented one, they're like, all right, we'll figure it out. Okay, we'll figure it out. Well, the cost of figuring it out in the SEAL teams is something. You got 2 people killed, right? And I just think at the end of the day, like the cowboy culture is always going to be there because you're dealing with cowboys, right? Like I said this in my video. You're dealing with the elite level performer in violence. And you can't have elite level performance without extreme internal confidence. It's just impossible. So you're going to have situations like this. They had them when I was in the SEAL teams. You're going to have them. Like this is the cost of having some of the world's most deadliest people on a leash. Sometimes they're going to get killed. And the other problem in the SEAL teams is it's a very young culture, right? Like the average SEAL is like 26 years old. The average Green Beret is like 34 years old. That's 10 years of life experience. I will say this, the community is one of the best communities in the world. They're going to do after actions. They're going to take adjustments. They're going to make training different. They're going to try to make sure that nobody can gun deck training. They're going to go back to longer workups. So they're trying to do this year workup when we had an 18-month workup to cover everything. They'll take the corrective action. As far as like stopping it or preventing it, that ain't never going to happen because you got cowboys doing cowboy shit. So
what you just said, when I had exposure to Green Berets, exposure to SEALs, Green Berets always seemed like dad bod older dudes this a long time ago. But they were always older guys, more mature. The first time I met some SEALs, I was in San Diego. I was at a bar. We almost got a big bar fight. I became friends with them as some SEALs, young guys. This is this is pre the Gulf War. And we became friends, but it was a cowboy culture. I learned about drug half-lives. Hey, we got a 40 limo, bro. You can do some. I'm like, well, so it was you knew there was a difference. Do you think we should go back and the SEAL teams and saying, hey, you should have a rate first, and then you go to SEAL? In other words, get a little more, be in the military a bit before you just jump into that. And they need to coach you up to be a cowboy, but you don't have your perspective on the military when the average age, like you said, is young in the SEAL teams compared to Green Berets.
So right now in the SEAL teams, they're not having any problems with recruitment. They are having some problems with people making it through. But I think having a rate was a big detractor from the SEAL teams, because in the Navy, you have to pass a test to promote. So if I'm a hull technician, I'm studying all this hull technician stuff, and none of it equates to being a Navy SEAL. Now, at least with the SO rate, they're testing and stuff that they're doing every day. So I don't agree with sending them back to the fleet to get a regular rate. I just think it's a factor of the community, right? Like, I was at graduation back in May, first time I've been on the compound, and there was like 10 freshly graduated, maybe 2 or 3 classes before SEALs. And I was like, oh my God, they're babies, right? Like, they're between probably 19 and 22, but it's just a young culture, right? It's just the culture. It's always been that way. So I mean, let's be honest, like the Green Berets, like none of them dudes are coming fresh out of high school. They got the 18 X-ray contract, but they got the same numbers we got. It's 1 out of 200 high school kids makes it through the 18 X-ray program. Same as Navy SEALs. 1 out of 200 Navy SEAL high school graduates from training. So the difference is, in the Army, you don't make it as an 18-year-old. You go to 82nd because you're airborne, right? You go to 101. You go to 173rd. You're going to an airborne unit where they have extremely high standards, and you're playing grunt for 3 or 4 years, maybe 2, but you're doing the exact same job you're going to interview for when you go to AFAS. So that's the difference, right? Like, there's a place to park a guy in the Army, and that comes back to Jameson, why I'm telling everybody to go in the Army. Like, this generation is super soft. Hey man, go in the Army. If you fail, you're going to go to infantry unit, airborne. You're going to get into an environment like we've talked about before, like the Marine Corps, that's going to have you growing into being a savage and a tough guy. That's the big difference. I don't know if you can fix it, because your other problem you got in Big Navy is Big Navy don't want to help the SEALs. I just think culturally, they're getting more professional. They're not allowing DUIs no more. You get a DUI, you're gone. They're dealing with the PEDs. It's in the article. It just is what it is, man. I mean, you got a guy working out 3 hours a day. That's an NFL level caliber athlete. Then you got him training another 10 hours a day. If he gets hurt and misses 2 weeks of training because he gets hurt, like, he's out. So he's going to take a little HGH to help his healing.
Yeah, there's one thing you were going to talk about that is important. And you did it one of your videos, one of your OCS candidates, where you said the Marine Corps is a white cult. I put the word toxic in. We'll get to that another time.